This is MC Fireside Chats, a weekly show devoted to the outdoor hospitality industry, hosted by Brian Searl and Kara Sismadia. You'll hear from special guests that focus on topics to help your business succeed, all backed by Modern Campground, the most innovative news source in the industry.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MC Fireside Chats. My name is Brian Searl with Insider Perks. Before I get started, guys, I just want to try something real quick. ChatGPT, edit my intro to take out Kara because she's no longer a host. Okay, it didn't work yet. We're not there yet. All right. I was just hoping. I had to try. I don't have enough time to do that. But for those of you who don't know, Kara is no longer my co-host, only because she has this super big, important role with CCRVC now, and she's got way too many things on her plate. So we'll miss her. But that was the reason. It apparently wasn't because she didn't like me enough, although maybe she was not. I mean, that is a thing with a lot of people, so it's possible. But super excited to be here for our first week episode again. We're welcoming back some of our recurring guests, Christine Taylor from the Towne law firm, Sandy Ellingson, Mike Harrison from CRR Hospitality. Sandy, what is the name of your company? Like, you need to put a dash there. Like,
SandyEllingson.com. That's the name of the company. And
well, I feel like that would be easier if we all just called our companies that.
I know. So
Mike,
most people.
What do you think, Mike? Sierra Hospitality renamed to Harrison Hospitality, Inc.?
I don't think anybody would stay with us.
I don't know. I don't know about that. Certainly more than they would stay with me. So, all right. Well, what do we got on our plates here for the last month? What's been happening in outdoor hospitality? We've had a big, huge July 4th holiday. How did occupancy go, Mike, at your properties? And Sandy, obviously, probably touch on this. And Christine, we were talking about your park too, so everybody can jump in.
Well, remember, most of our parks are in Arizona currently. So,
what are you saying? They're not patriotic down there, Mike?
No, we're very patriotic. We had slow rolls and flags, but we also had record temperatures of 116 degrees. So July 4th, while it is busier than some of the summer, it's not a busy holiday like, let's say, Maine, right?
Okay.
Or up north. It was hot.
Yeah, I have seen that, and I'm relatively enjoying Canada right now. So feel free to come visit, Mike, if you want to.
I think they said that Monday was like the world record for heat.
Tuesday was even hotter. I did read that on CNN this morning.
That like the entire planet was
average
hotter.
temperature of the whole world. Yeah, it was 17 degrees Celsius or something. 17.1 on Monday and 17.6 on Tuesday.
So it was even really hot up here, which has brought with it some insane thunderstorms. So that's been interesting.
That's very pleasant here. Again, the invitation is open to everyone. It's wonderful here.
Let me Google 17 degrees Celsius.
Oh, yes, I forgot. Christine's blessed with having a husband in Canada, right? Or family in Canada?
That's true. Yeah, both. Yeah. So
we up the top half, the Brian Sertles and the Christines on the top. We operate on what the rest of the world does, and then there's America.
Yeah. Canada, America's hat, if you will. So.
You guys want to chart your own path, but 17 Celsius is what, about, I don't know, 60? Something like that?
62.6.
Yeah. So I have heard some of the conversations about trying to do the analysis on the 4th of July occupancy and factoring in different variances because it was off from what last year, obviously. It was a little bit lower than what was expected. But they felt like, again, the weather was a big deal. We had really bad weather across a significant section of the East over the holiday weekend that people talked about in advance. And so people were canceling or changing their dates in advance. The holiday fell kind of in the middle of the week. So there wasn't a clear 4th of July weekend for people. And then the heat, other than just storms, but the heat was a significant factor. So a lot of the parks that normally would have been sold out 100% still had occupancy.
Do we really think that this is, and I'm just asking and playing devil's advocate here, I'm not saying I believe this, right? But let's just play devil's advocate because it's very easy to make an excuse forever, perpetually, that something happened because it wasn't right. So, and I understand those are all valid reasons, and I'm not suggesting that they're not true, but it's very easy to continue that discussion forever and just continue making excuses as to why parks aren't full. And I think there's could be a danger in that if one day it becomes not true.
Sure, but I would say for the 4th in general, that one's notoriously not as full as the other holiday weekends. I'd
Okay.
say Memorial Day and Labor Day, even in the years that like I grew up in it, were always quicker to be sold out than 4th of July because they're always attached to a weekend, kind of like Sandy was saying. So like
Okay, that makes sense.
they always, whereas she's right, this midweek one, our campground, if you looked at like a 4 or 5 day stretch, you would say we were sold out. Like no one could have stayed there, like come in and stayed like for that whole period. We had some people come in on Friday, some people come in on Saturday, some people come in on Sunday. So it was, they, instead of them all coming in on like Friday and leaving on Tuesday,
Right.
it was like very spread out. I mean, my husband had to work on Monday, so we had a lot of people who were still there just for like a regular camping weekend.
But your husband's in Canada?
No, he's here in the U.S.
Oh, okay.
Since Monday wasn't the holiday, a lot
Right.
of
So
people
Monday
didn't
up here
have
was
it
a
off.
holiday. That's why I was asking, because Canada Day was
A lot
Saturday
of
and we
people
all got off.
didn't have it off. Why?
Yeah.
Canada Day was Saturday, wasn't it?
Canada Day was Saturday, but the federal holiday that we had, like all of our holidays are on Mondays.
Yeah,
Almost every
okay.
single one of them.
So
So
yeah,
like
that's
we
the
have a long
problem.
weekend. We have one long weekend, like literally almost every month.
So that's the problem in the U.S. with the 4th of July is since it moves every year.
Yeah.
In years like this, when it's in the middle of the week, if you only get off the 4th and you didn't want to take that as a vacation day. So we had a lot of people who treated this past weekend like a regular weekend, came in on Friday, left on Sunday.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
if you look at some of the bigger indicators, Campspot sent out their monthly trends
News
report.
alert,
And basically, they saw a softening, of course, on occupancy for the rest of the year and an uptick in ADR. However, for June, they saw that same park bookings, while it was down in April and May, June was up 4%, and July and August improved by about 100 bips. Also, and then the Q4 is stable. So it hasn't been that continued low as me. We're all doomed. We're all going to die.
I mean, I don't know if did I ever say that? I don't know if that was ever but
No. I think, but that's been some of the talk is the record year, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing that just came out this week also was the U.S. consumer confidence spiked in June. From obviously it was a low kind of just near the end of 2022. And it was almost 80 in June, which I guess above 80 is indicative of smooth sailing.
That's fascinating to me, right? Like, and I don't want to get into a discussion about consumer confidence, but why? Like, what in the world happened to make people be like, yes, let's just go spend more money and we're confident now?
Well, I'm certainly not an economist, but I think, gas prices stabilized considerably over the last 3 or 4 or 5 months, right? I think that's
right, but that wasn't a June thing, is what or a May thing, right?
But I think it's taken that long for people to kind of, get their shivers, away. I think inflation has certainly, there was a continued spike, and it has softened in terms of the progressive, growth that it had been. So I think, the Fed, the interest rates have gone up and up and up and up and up. And then obviously we saw this in the housing industry and our other businesses, went down a point and, Q2, Q1 was, the halls were empty. Q2, was great. That 1 point reduction in the interest rate made a considerable difference. So I think there's a lot of indicators of why. Does that mean everybody's out of the woods? No. Does that mean, smooth sailing forever? No, but I think the fire drill nature of it certainly has softened a little bit.
I think it's again, I'm not going to take this down this path, right? But I think it's just a fascinating discussion because I think the whole problem with this economy right now is that the people with the investment banks and CNBC and everywhere else are saying like the Fed is going to pause. The Fed is going to pause. They're going to cut rates at the end of the year. And the Fed is like, no, you guys are idiots. We're not doing that. And no one is listening. And that's just delaying the inevitable. It's causing consumers to continue spending and businesses to put off layoffs. And I think when they finally realize that the Fed is serious, we're in a whole heap of trouble.
Well,
Not in camping, but
because none of our investors are saying that, right? We're still very cautious.
I think it's the small businesses, like the
even
bigger
the large
boys
ones
know what's coming.
Our partners in the bank, same things. We're I haven't heard anybody say that really it's the end of the year is great.
I mean, I continually hear that on CNBC, but you're right. Like the people that use
CNBC, right?
that's what the consumer is listening to, and that's what small business owners are listening to, right? And so I understand what you're saying. I agree with you 100%. The banks and everybody else who are in this every day are not saying that. But Main Street hasn't gotten the message yet, I don't think. So anyway, we don't want to take it down that path. Sorry.
Fair enough.
But
you asked.
Because I'm not an economist, and I'll say something stupid. I probably already have said 10 things stupid. So, but so what else? So July 4th. Let's have to ask this question real quick. So Sandy, Christine, what did you see at your park? And congratulations, by the way.
On being I mean, fun times. No, it's good. I mean, honestly, both personally and other clients and things like that, more of the same. So legally, some of the similar things. There's some more litigious people out there, trying to do what I call like the 5K slip and falls and stuff like that. I've seen that. There's a somewhat an undercurrent of disgruntledness in some people who, would poke at things they had it before. I've had a lot of guest removal issues, kind of countrywide. People have had guests that were problematic that they've had to remove, or their belongings, like some abandoned campers. So kind of the trend that I'd seen over the last few years has just kind of continued. We have more employment lawsuits. What I guess would be the newest thing is that I'd say the governments had been pretty busy and backlogged during 2020. So now if they had felt that they weren't being paid correctly, or they hadn't been doing their inspections of your property, I have a lot of people who've newly gotten hit with fines from their various states because they have finally caught up on their paperwork and inspections. So I have a lot of people contending with different state agencies right now, either for failing to pay or renew or inspect or a whole host of things. But I feel like the governments have finally caught up on their backlog and now are, investigating those things they had kind of been ignoring for the last 3 years.
I mean, I don't think that's fair, right? Like, if we can pause student loans, we should be able to pause all penalties for businesses for a couple of years.
You would think so, but unfortunately, there's no precedent for it. So unless somebody's willing to litigate about the same, which most people don't want to, we're just kind of stuck with what we got.
Something you said, Christine, really kind of sparked my interest because for the first time this year, I'm working with a lot of parks in the north. And so I'm learning a lot from some of these parks that might be just seasonal. They're only open part of the year, but they allow people to leave their rigs year round, or a lot of parks that are long-term stay that are now trying to shift to transient, which I've always worked with, but it feels like the numbers are bigger. But one of the things that's interesting is, back in 2007, when the economy crashed, a lot of people who were into mobile home parks got left where people abandoned their rigs, and it cost them a lot of money to try and move them. And that's when they kind of went into the RV park industry with long-term stay, because the idea was you were safer because, they had wheels and you could get them off. But a couple of the things I've been seeing recently is exactly what you said, is I've been seeing parks that have really been left with these old rigs because they've allowed them to come in and sit there either seasonally or long-term. And then the person just abandons it. And not only do they not tell you they're leaving, they leave all of their junk. And so it's still costing them $2,500 to haul it off, to get rid of it and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just wondering if, I'm seeing that increasing. I'm wondering if it's an increasing trend already. If more parks are seeing that, and there's something we should be doing proactively to try to address that.
I think we need, to be clear, we want to dive into this topic in a second. I think we need a show, like they have the Storage Wars show, right? Where you just auction off, you don't know what's in it and it's closed. Like you just need to have people show up and bid on the closed trailer and
Well,
say
it's
there can
funny
be like
that you say that. So different states actually have the ability to do that. So in New York, for example, if you get all the way to that part of the process, they allow you to use the lien law, just making this short, that eventually lets you auction off their camper to recover any fees they owed you for it. But this is a twofold issue. One, the process sucks. I'm going to be honest. Unlike a storage unit, because it's a vehicle, motor vehicle, depending, and you have to do a lot of lien searches and you have to notice people. So if it's a newer camper, there's a chance they still owe money on it, and we have to notice the bank first because they'd get first dibs. And then if it's an older camper, it might not be worth anything, so it's not worth the process to go through it. So yes, we could.
Well, that's why you don't tell them what's inside it, right? Like it could be. We heard that he was an ancient Egyptian historian archaeologist, and there could be untold treasures in there.
That's right.
Whatever you want to do.
New Indiana Jones, you know.
I think that's where he went, and he probably got lost in a cave somewhere, and that's why he didn't come back.
Well, I have had two instances where a rig sat in a park for a month, and guests kept complaining about the smell, and they actually found the man in there murdered by his wife. That was a very interesting situation.
What kind of park do you work for, Sandy?
Hey, this is a really great park. Owner owns 4 parks, but this was a crazy work camper. She told everybody that her and her husband had to go back to Texas to take care of a sick family member, and that they were leaving the rig, but they'd be back. She made phone calls every week to check in. The whole time she had dismembered him and put him in the shower.
You see how much value we bring to you, Mike, while you could be doing real work? Yeah.
And the second one was we literally had a manager that had a heart attack and died in his rig. And because he was the only person working on property, it took weeks for somebody to actually say, hey, because it was a long-term stay park.
Yeah.
To say, we haven't seen the manager in a while. And, you know, nobody had reported him, and it was pretty sad. But I was wondering, one of the things I suggested in just the conversation was that if you put in a lot of parks to say you can't come unless your rig is less than 10 years old. But then what if you put in, if you wanted to do that, it had to pass an annual inspection, and you put those things in there, like the tires had to be good. They couldn't be rotted, right? If it were a drivable, it had to be able to be cranked and moved, right? Those kind of things. Because already
who would do the inspection is my question, right? Like, would they have to be required to foot the bill themselves?
I would think.
Shaking his head like, no, that's not going to work. Go ahead.
Inspection every year if you want to stay, and it covers a bait. And when I say inspection, I'm just saying you kind of take a look at it and you go, this thing is probably still roadworthy. We're okay. Or campers aren't complaining about it. It doesn't make us look like a park that where nobody wants to come. This is where trailers come to die. So anyway, I don't know. I think it's an intriguing conversation, and I always like to be proactive, because right now, if it's starting to happen, we're being reactive. And how do we change that reactive to proactive? Because
people are abandoning skyscrapers in San Francisco that are worth billions of dollars and not paying those mortgages. So maybe this is just a trend. Yeah.
Well, for the most part, the ones I've seen are older units. They're not units. The bank will come looking for it, right? Somehow, if money is owed on it. Definitely a lot of older rigs and a lot of older people who have parked those rigs there and have no way of moving them. They don't own a truck to tow it with anymore.
I want to know why Mike was shaking his head.
It's not worth it. Everybody's different, right? For
right.
Us, for us, we got 400 something sites at each park, and who's going to manage the administration of inspecting all 400 sites and keeping the paperwork? And then there's got to be some kind of not fair housing, but how do you unilaterally administer the policy on what you determine? There's legal implications on that. So for me, I just think I look at the administrative burden it would put, and is that worth it? You mentioned proactivity, Sandy. I think for our approach, and again, we're a little bit different. I mean, we're more upscale, so the not that we don't have issues. Of course we do. We've had deaths also, and various incidences, of course. But I think you just got to uphold your rules and regulations proactively as opposed to reactively, and you address those ones. You can tell typically which ones are going to be your problems, and you hopefully eject rather than evict. Before they become a problem. That's how we would approach it. I wouldn't want to, for us anyway, have to put a whole burden of inspecting every rig.
Oh, I would.
Weren't we looking for a use for that robot dog, Mike?
Yeah, I wouldn't inspect every rig. I'd only inspect those that were outside the age limit. I feel like people come in at different times, so you would do it on the anniversary of their check-in date, not on January 1st of every year or anything like that. But anyway, I just, my strategic
There are
mind
no
likes
bad ideas. Like we're just thinking, right? Like certainly I'm no expert.
At the crux of it, I think it might be somewhere in between the two of them. I mean, what Mike said is certainly important. You got to have those rules first. I'd say that's number one. There's been a movement towards that, but there are a lot of people who still have nothing in writing. And if you don't have any rules and people don't know what they are, then enforcing that, has all of those issues. The second thing is if it's a movable, RV, such that they have an RVIA sticker and we're claiming that they're an RV for a whole host of reasons, we don't want them to do anything to change the permanency of that structure. So like I've had some campgrounds who, when they went to go to remove something, looked fine on the outside, but the floor must have rotted at one point, and the people had their slide outs out and redid the floor with the slide outs out such that you couldn't push the slide outs in anymore. So then it was no longer towable. So, I could see why you would want to inspect and that kind of thing, or bolting the deck to the camper, as long as you have clear rules about that so that's not happening, such that they remain towable, it shouldn't be that big an issue. And you're right, Brian, what you said, and Sandy, about the bank coming to look for it. I've had a couple people whose campers have been repossessed. I think this is somewhat showing what happened and what's kind of changing with the economy, what we were talking about. A lot of people bought campers, when that was the only mode of kind of vacationing at the time. And some people got campers that they probably couldn't afford. Maybe their financial situation has changed, but I have to be honest, I had never really had to walk a campground through a repossession of a seasonals camper. And now I've had a couple of them in the last, 18 months or so. So I think there's a little tiptoe there. But really the crux of any operation is to have rules and guidelines and be very transparent about them and enforce them equally. And, I appreciate that you want to be proactive, Sandy, but besides the administrative burden, Mike briefly talked about the legalities of it. It can be very hard. And I'm sure it would open up to, why is Sally's camper okay? Mine looks the same. Is it just because you don't like males or whatever it is? So
I mean, you just need to get in there, right? So like, what if you just call the FBI and report you saw a most wanted fugitive and they bust down the door and then you can get into it?
You never know. That is a way, but I try to stay as away from people's units as possible because I don't want to expose myself to any more liability. So as long as from the outward view, I can see that everything's okay, such that if I had to tow them off the property, I could. That would kind of be my baseline. But if you didn't have agreements or rules in place, you really got to. I think that a lot of these people are, this is the reactive piece, wishing that they had something, especially if they're in a state
after it happens to you the first time.
Yeah, especially if you're in a state that doesn't have a statute. Like some states have really clear statutes about campgrounds and what to do with them in the Northeast. And other places, and some places don't. And if you're in the state that doesn't have anything in the law about campgrounds, you better hope you got your paperwork, because that's the only way we're going to be able to prove, that you're okay and you're in the right. So I think the more proactive approach is to make sure your staff is trained correctly and your paperwork's in order. And that's kind of the movement I've been trying to shove people to.
And it's tough, right? Like it's tough as a small business owner to foresee absolutely every potential thing that could possibly happen and have paperwork for it. So
sure.
In some ways,
nobody wants to read all that anyway. That's part of the pushback too, is that if I tried to cover every situation for you, it would be insane. And I know there are some attorneys that do that. I read a waiver that another attorney had made for a campground, And I was curious, so I like copied and pasted it all into a Word document to see how long it really was once it was off this website. And it was 15 pages long, and that was just a waiver and release. Like, but that was one of many documents I gave you. You would never want to come. Like, you would be like, that's crazy. I don't sign that, to have surgery. Like, I absolutely understand that there is a fine line between protecting yourself and operational standards, and
Right.
you want to do better, but it's never going to be ironclad or the best if you actually want to have guests come to your campgrounds. So I am aware of that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what else do we have that's not legal and sad and depressing? That we can
It's not always
So-
depressing.
I know.
So I'm working on something that's really fun.
Are you
And
going to tell us, or are you just going to tease
yes,
us? before
it
we
is.
start?
And it's nothing that's making me money, so it's not an advertisement. But looking at forming some awards that can be given out each year for multiple areas of the industry as innovators. And it's kind of coming out of the first innovator summit that we had in Elkhart, but finding campgrounds that are being innovative in some new way, right? So, and then being able to individuals be able to say, I want to put them up for entry.
Does using an AI chatbot count?
Yes, it would too. Yeah, absolutely. So like technology, product, and then like either a supplier, OEM kind of person, like who is, as a consumer, who do we see being innovative? Not them telling us they're being innovative, but having the consumer tell them what they're seeing as being innovative and what are the things that they're already doing versus trying to create this wish list. And it's been
I think
really
we have too many awards already, though. Like I'm being devil's advocate again here, right?
I do think it's fun, and I think there's a way of gamifying it once you do it that really makes it fun.
Okay.
But I also feel like so many people are doing things that are innovative, but they're doing them in a bubble. And so there's other, like, somebody might be creating a really great product, but the campground has no clue what this product is or how it works. And it happens to be going on every RV, right? But they need to know about that. Or the manufacturers are coming up with some neat things. And again, the campground may not know about it. So how do they prepare for that? So I just think being able to share the areas where we're innovating and who's being innovative and doing what in again, a proactive way really makes it interesting. So we've got.
I like that almost more from an industry to industry, peer to peer standpoint, though, than involving the consumers.
Well, we've already started at peer to peer. And so we're meeting twice a year now, and different people are being invited to be a part of the group as it grows. But then there becomes the consumer part of it. Do we need to add a piece to that where they actually can, maybe they see something we don't see?
Maybe, but if it's just innovation, I don't think the consumer is necessary. What do you think, Mike?
Well, the consumer won't know.
Okay.
More than anything
Whether it's
else.
innovative or not.
No, they're not going to know till it's kind of done and implemented, and even then, it'll probably take 2 or 3 or 4 years for consumer adoption. I like, first of all, and this is not a call for me to prove everything Sandy says. So it's like the third time Sandy said something.
We love Sandy. She's got so many good ideas. We just got to pick and choose.
That's what I mean. It's an amazing idea.
It is.
But we're just talking about approach, right? So it's just difference in approach. So I think it's an amazing idea. I love the sharing. I think innovation, collaboration is how this industry grows. So I think it's awesome. I think, Brian, your point is a salient one, solid one. Is that I think it's more the industry partners as opposed to the consumer that can share it. And some of that's proprietary in nature, of course, but the best practices, I believe, rising tide raises all ships, and we've got to continue to push the industry forward. And I think that's, as we, like you've heard me say this, there's 40 different booking sites you got to go into for an RV, search, right? Boy, for a consumer, it'd be great if there's 2 or 3 or 4. And so I think a lot of these things fall into that category as well. But I love the idea
I mean, I will say, like, from my perspective, right? Like, the problem with, if you look at the industry awards, and we're not going to pick on anything specific, right? But the places where a campground gets an award from a peer, I think a big part of that process problem in almost every instance, and there are exceptions that do it differently, is that you can nominate yourself. And then there are so few people who actually nominate themselves that it ends up either being the same park every year or whatever else. And then the judgment is done by like 4 or 5 people. And then you get like best website of the year and it looks like everyone else's website. Like there needs to be some kind of criteria here to where an award actually means something, to where the association, if you're giving out awards, they're going out and looking for these people and going right. And they're not letting people self-nominate. This is, I don't know. And maybe that's not as big of a problem as I see, but like, I don't know. Like I was told for 7 years in a row I would win Supplier of the Year if I just nominated myself, and I refused. I'm not interested in nominating myself. Do you think I'm good? Let me know.
Which one you want to be nominated for? I'll nominate.
But that's the thing, right? And that's how it kind of works. Like,
that kind of builds Sandy's point, though, is that there's more authenticity. That's a good word. Authenticity. If a consumer votes for it and picks it, as opposed to
right. But I agree. Like I think there is a lot of value. That's why I'm bringing this up, right? I think there's a lot of value in the peer-to-peer aspect of it, but I think the peer-to-peer aspect needs to focus more on really deep diving as a committee or a board or a group or whoever's in charge of it, instead of letting everybody else come to them. So I think, again, I'm very much saying that it's a good idea, Sandy.
Well, and that's kind of why I like the idea of it being focused around being an innovator, because there's a very clear definition of what we're looking at and what qualifies as an innovator for each of the different categories. And so it's not just like best website, because you can have a terrible website win because nobody knows, if there is no real best website out there, then the lowest common denominator wins, right? But innovator means you've got to be doing something that nobody else is doing or nobody has done in the industry already, or doing something new in a creative way. And I think those things are inspiring. And to what Mike said, we just kind of raise everybody up when we talk about innovative things. So I'm curious, what is the incentive for this, right? And I know you may not have an answer yet, right? But I'm just curious, because I think some of the other issue why people don't really necessarily go in droves to nominate other parks is, what is the incentive when the park wins? I get a little badge on my website that says X association or X company says I'm the best campground in the world. I'm #1 in today's 10 best or whatever, right? But does that really mean anything? Did millions of people really vote?
It does.
No, I know it means something from a marketing perspective, absolutely. But does it really mean something to the park other than that increased visibility for business? Which is probably enough. But I'm not talking about consumer awards, to be clear. I'm talking about the peer-to-peer right now, the industry.
From an owner standpoint and a manager standpoint,
whoever's standpoint.
Yes, it's something to be proud of. It's something to, it's an accomplishment. It's something that you can market. I mean, it's no different than in school. I know this sounds very basic, but whether you got a gold star or you were student of the month, any opportunity that you had, you got a sticker, it makes you, it's proof that, the work that you've done has paid off, right? But no matter who's, acknowledging you. Now, again, if the organization, like to Sandy's point, is the trash collectors of the U.S., RV Camping Awards, well, maybe it doesn't have a lot of validity, but if an industry professional like Sandy, puts it up and there's some validity in it, then of course, absolutely has value, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it saves us all time and money. And I think when we are in business, we want to run lean operations. We all want to be profitable. Our resources often are challenged, especially in today's economy. And so when we can innovate together, and a great example of this, and it's been going on for years, and it just drives me nuts because there's already an answer, but people aren't talking to each other, is the whole charging of an electric car thing. Oh my goodness, that has been around the parks forever. Like What do we do? When do we do it? How do we do it? Why do we do it? Oh, it's okay to let them, charge their car at the 50 amps, post. No, it's not. I mean, there's just so many things. And it, when these, if we're working and we're watching for what's going on and we say, hey, there are a lot of people who are towing electric cars behind their drivables, maybe we need to figure that out. And then we worked on it together as an industry. We've got 3 of your major OEMs now that they are working on a project for fully autonomous electric drivable vehicles. They're working on the integration between an electric car and a towable. But the parks don't know anything about that. And while some of it is shrouded under confidentiality, enough of it is not that the conversation should still be had.
But even if the parks know about this, right? So I think this is maybe another issue that we were talking about, right? And so I saw a Facebook post in perhaps a group that we might be broadcasting live in right now, but there's 13 of them, so we'll leave it unnamed. But where somebody said, I've gotten totally fed up with electric cars, so we're just going to ban all electric cars. They can't come into us anymore because we're tired of people. And so I feel like how many years has the industry been talking at conferences about the importance of electric cars and charging stations? And you've heard on the news that electric cars are coming and Tesla and everything else. And yet there's still people who are like, we just don't think electric cars are a thing. It's a fad. We're going to ban them all from our campground. So I don't know how we solve that, right? Like we can get the communication down and certainly organizations like ARVIC and KOA are doing a great job of that. But I don't know if communication is the only thing we need. How do we get the part about it to some people? Yeah. Like it's coming and it's like you might not like it, but it's fact.
Right.
Like why would you ever kick electric people? And sorry to the person, but like I just don't understand that.
Yeah. Well, they don't like electric cars because they don't know how to deal with them. And so it's an education issue. And if you're innovating in advance together and then you're providing the solution, we never get to that point. Because the EV charging for cars provides 2 things to parks. One, it provides an ancillary revenue stream. There's 3 different ways you can do it. And then it also provides another marketing opportunity because once you have an EV charging station, you're on their map. And so somebody who may or may not even be an RVer could stop at your park. You can sell them a cup of coffee or something to eat out of your store while they're charging. Right. But then they might go, wow, I saw that cabin. I think I'd like to come back and stay here sometime. So it's that passive marketing that we can do without having to pay for it.
But how do we get a hold of these parks and communicate this message more than we're already doing, right? It's in Woodall's, it's in Modern Campground, it's at ARVIC, it's at KOA, it's on our show, it's Sandy's talking about it, and Mike's talking about it, and everybody, right? But they're still not either hearing the message or they're not understanding it. And I don't know, like it's important.
Yeah.
And the innovation awards and thoughts and things would certainly help with that, but I don't know what the answer is because I feel like, and I'm not trying to actually criticize that person, I feel bad because they're going to lose business.
Right.
So I think, and I don't mean to get like all technical here. I don't know if you ever heard of the law of diffusion of innovation. If you're familiar with Simon Sinek, he really kind of promotes that scientific study. And there's 2.5% of the innovators, 13.5% of the early adopters, 34% of the early majority, 34% of the late majority, and then 16% of the laggards, right? Brian, you're clearly an innovator, right? AI, I'm going to try everything until it breaks. I don't care if nobody's done. I'm going to do it no matter what, right? Then there's the early adopters, et cetera, et cetera. We are still not in an early majority. I don't even know that we're in the phase of early adopters for EV yet. Right. So until there's enough of a tipping point, and then the laggards, Simon Sinek says, they're the people that the only reason they don't have a rotary phone anymore is because they don't make them. Right. And so, there's always going to be those get off my lawn people. But as far as EV goes, until there's a tipping point where it hits the early majority, there's not going to be an adoption of this, until you see, those electric RVs on the road. Until you see enough charging stations to get 1,500 miles from Texas to California and you can map it out, it's going to be this. No. So it's time, right? So the continued discussion, the continued innovation. That'll all happen. And we're taking the same approach, right? In this, I mean, we typically we're the innovators, early adopters. We like to be on the front. We want to be playing with stuff. But in EV, for example, we're waiting to the early majority. There's no point in laying out capital infrastructure. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to have to be, there's too much that has to happen yet for us to kind of go, we're putting all these in our parks. We're laying all these, because it's going to change in 3 or 4 or 5 years as the technology changes.
For sure, yeah. So I don't think really I'm criticizing that aspect of it, and I didn't mean to if it came across that way. I think I'm just saying, like, it's very easy to understand whether the industry is there or not, or 10 years away or 15 years away, that electric vehicles are here and they're rapidly increasing in the amount that they're selling, and you can see that everywhere. So that's the part I don't understand, is why you would want to undercut yourself in a market. But that's me. Like, that's a big problem with my personality, I'll admit. Because I see and read and research so much information every single day that I guess I don't sometimes see how people miss things. But that's definitely my fault.
Yeah. Different perspective. Not a fault. It's just a different perspective.
Right. Yeah. But it's sometimes hard for me to see that. So I'll admit that. Right. I have 100,000 faults and flaws and all that kind of stuff. So, but all right. So what else is going on? We've had a month since we've last seen each other. Maybe 2 months for Christine, right?
For me, I caught my toddler's death plague last month, so I spared you all that version of myself.
Well, tell us. So let's tell. Christine's on here normally from a law firm perspective to keep me in check because I say crazy things, and also to share an insight once, or maybe it's the other way around, to share insights and then also once in a while keep me in check. But tell us about your campground, Christine. Your family got back in. We were talking about that before the show.
Yeah, we are. So my family bought a campground that's been around for a very, very long time. And it is about an hour outside of Albany. So that's where my law firm is Albany. So not too far. But I do feel a little bit like I'm working 3 jobs currently as I help with the transition. We took over right as it was opening for the season. So as I'm sure you all can attest, not the best timing for change and getting a handle on things. So I'm sure we'll have a lot of fixing of stuff to do this winter. But it's been fun and exciting to be back in it. It's also, and as I was explaining to one of my law clerks earlier today, fun to see our stuff in action, like literally be there and see how, what we've been telling other clients, how it's working, how it's not working. So it's good to see the adjustment, live, whether that's paperwork or how we're handling things and stuff like that. It definitely will make my whole conference circuit a little different this fall, having to deal with it firsthand again. It did remind me how both awesome and awful customer service is when you have to see a lot of people all the time. So that's been interesting. It's been fun to buy new product from vendors and try out things that we didn't get to do, on our other campground. What was that, like 5 years ago? Because a lot has changed in the 5 years. And it's pretty interesting because given where this one is located, we're actually pulling from some of the same kind of guest pool that we pulled from the very first campground my parents bought over in that part of New York. So a little bit feels like coming full circle. I actually, as a child, had made some really close friends on my parents' first campground who I still talk to occasionally, on Facebook or text message. And I reached out to them to be like, hey, remember how we met on a campground when I was 9 years old? I know you still live in that area. Would you want to go camping again? Just because it's been nice to come kind of full circle. So lots of positive, but lots of tired, and excited to watch my own child grow up in a campground since that's what I did. So it's fun and exhausting, and it has changed a lot, and fun to see what has changed, what still works, and what doesn't work anymore. Like back when we first had a campground, to get kids to do things, I didn't have to compete with technology. For example, there were no smartphones or Wi-Fi or any of that. And now, it's very different to see what activities kids are still willing to come through and give up on that kind of technology briefly, or what adults are into and things like that. So that's been really fun.
I'm very interested. Mike, can I put you on the spot for a second? It's a softball question, right? Can I put you on the spot for a second? So I'm curious.
Sure.
So Mike, obviously CRR Hospitality, right? Management company for RV parks, RV resorts, campgrounds, glamping resorts, hotels, stuff like that. I'm very curious if you, and then not Christine's Park specifically, but if you were hypothetically brought in to manage, improve a park that had such a long storied history, that had that brand name recognition, that had the generational, right? How would you use that to your advantage?
You almost can't craft a better story, right? I mean, we focus on experiential hospitality, and if you go to the hospitality business, hotels, a room is a room is a room, right? And what you're marketing is your marketing location, and you're marketing your identity, right? And so if you've already got the location right, that's wonderful. But then the second part is, how do you separate yourself from everybody else's through your identity? And if you've got that legacy brand, which is what you're describing, I mean, you leverage that to the cows come home. That's amazing, right? Otherwise, you have to manufacture it, right? And we're going to have a property out in the middle of the desert in Arizona that we're going to have to start from the ground up, that has no reputation, that really has no interesting features, nothing unique. It's going to have location. And so it's going to be hard, but location will help. If you've got both, and it sounds like you do, you leverage that with every bit of marketing dollar you can. Unless you don't need to. I mean, if you're full and you got great revenue management, then don't spend a dime. And then it just becomes about ADR and maximizing. But yeah, it's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's definitely good insight. So I always forget, by the way, and I mentioned it in the Facebook post, but we are sponsored by Fireside Accounting, which we're super grateful for the first week here. And I always forget to put up their banner, and I just clicked it twice, right?
Put it up longer. That's like, right.
But we're really grateful for Fireside Accounting, Lindsay Foos and her whole team for sponsoring. And it's one of those things where you don't know what you don't know, right? And so we've talked about in this show previously, a couple minutes ago, where we've talked about all the different, you don't know that somebody might abandon their trailer, and so you don't know to create that paperwork, and you don't know. And so when you talk about accounting, I think the don't knows are probably 150 times as long as, maybe not the legal don't knows total, but that's pretty close, right, Christine?
Yeah, I'd say so. I tell people all the time that I'm not an accountant, so don't ask me accounting questions. I went to law school because I don't like numbers. So, go find people who know it's okay to have a team of people who are better at things than you are. So
yeah, because the amount of money they're going to save you in deductions probably far outsets the amount that you would pay a firm like that. So if you're in the need for accounting services, our sponsor, Lindsay Foos and her team, Fireside Accounting, great people. They run a great, very knowledgeable accounting firm, and we're thankful for their support. So we've got about 12 minutes left, guys. What else has come across your desk, or what are you looking forward to the rest of the summer here?
I have a question. I'm kind of curious. Do your campgrounds do theme weekends and stuff like that? And are you trying any kind of new events this summer that you haven't done before?
For sure. I mean, again, if you're a Yellowstone park, the amount of marketing you're going to have to do is very different than if you're not a national park location, right? Or if you're a Florida park, right? I mean, they get 85-90% occupancy that's annual, and then you're just gravy on top of some transit. If you're not, one of those locational advantage properties, then you got to create buzz, you got to create interest, you got to create, some marketing opportunities. And so we do that all the time. Our big events typically are Halloween, right? People love to, come during Halloween. We have other many small events, whether it's Father's Day, but we advertise our slow rolls at the holidays, which is those you decorate your bike or your golf cart or your ATV and pull through the property. For two specials, breakfast with Santa, for sure. Depending on the property, we'll have other larger events. We're looking to parking lot at one of our properties, and we're probably, looking to do maybe like a farmer's market, on a regular basis there, to leverage both the community and the notoriety that way. But all of those are marketing opportunities. backlink opportunities, Brian, to have additional things for your website, for your customer. So, yeah, I mean, they're great. It sounds like you and I want to have a call, even if you don't need to hire us. I'm happy to chat with you.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I mean, part of what's been interesting, I mean, I've been attending the trade shows for, the last 5 years, but haven't had any reason to, buy anything, even though I walk around, and it is interesting for me to see what campgrounds are putting in or not. And the thing that I don't know if a campground's done it yet, and if you know, let me know. But a lot of campgrounds have hired firework companies in the past for like the 4th of July. And there was this whole discussion I was reading on this like community page about the movement towards drones instead of fireworks drone shows. And I was like, oh, that actually would be pretty cool. And then your community wouldn't be strapped. So
they had a really huge drone show at the Calgary Stampede last year. It was amazing.
But also fireworks, Chris Hipple's not on the call. He would cringe like I just kind of did. Fireworks are terrible for your insurance policy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But it's not just that. There are many of the municipalities that have migrated towards the drone shows now. It's more eco-friendly if that's important. Long-term, it's cost-effective. It's safer in terms of fire risk. Absolutely. Yeah. Drone show is
so I was
what
curious.
If you accidentally set off a firework near the trailer that needs moved?
Well, if anyone, there you go. Well, if anyone hears of a campground doing it, I want to know, because I'm very curious how that works in a kind of a smaller setting, not the Stampede or not a giant municipality. So that's one that's on my radar. I'm very curious about.
What is happening with you, Sandy, down there? Like,
there was a bug a little gnat that just kept flying by. I kept trying to ignore it, but it was not allowing me to ignore it.
So what else is going on in your world, Sandy? What are you excited about for the rest of the summer?
Well, I am excited about figuring out, and it's kind of funny what you were talking about, the theme weekends with a lot of the heat and things like that. Trying to encourage people to keep camping in the heat. And we're trying to adopt some of the things that some of the northern campgrounds do in the South by theming up some of the weekends to encourage people to get out and still camp. So we're doing some of the phone parties, and we're doing literally, I don't know if any of you have ever seen, but they have these pop-up splash pads now that you can rent or buy, which for some of my older campgrounds that they're almost landlocked. It's not like they have a spot they could really build one even. We've been using some of those. So coming up with some of those fun weekend kind of things. And then we're bundling them together. So you pay for the weekend. You don't pay per night and kind of thing. It's like, if you want to come to this event, it's a weekend. It includes 4 people and everything is included. And that has been really surprisingly successful. And we're actually marketing it to guests who've already been there. So we're not even out trying to reach at this point guests that have never been, because we have enough to pull from in the databases to pull those in. So that's been kind of fun. And then the other thing I'm super getting into lately is the idea of agritourism. I actually started working with a park in Central Florida that's licensed for agritourism, and I'd never done anything like that. And it is unbelievable how many people come from northern states that have never seen a cow, never seen a goat. And these kids are just having so much fun, and people are spending a lot of money to fly to these campgrounds for agritourism. So that's another one of the things I'm really excited about. There is a park in Central Florida. If you Google Central Florida and agritourism, you'll find it. So I won't promote their name necessarily, but everybody should go to this.
Say the name. You already basically told everybody to go do it. What is the name?
Well, I mean, I don't want to feel like I'm playing favorites, but Wilderness Shores
RV You just did. Say the name. Come on.
Wilderness Shores RV Resort is the name of it. And on there are multiple ponds on the property, but he's got longhorn cows. Ferdinand is
Mike's Googling it right now. He needs to know the name.
Yeah. Wilderness Shores RV Resort.
See, if you had put on those search criteria, Wekiva Falls, Forever Young, one you just said didn't come up, so now we know.
Wekiva Falls is a very nice resort. I've been there. Used to be a KOA. Anyway, sorry. Now everybody's Googling it.
Yeah, and they do great on Hip Camp, by the way. But anyway, it's you know what? It's weird. Their website's not showing up when you Google it. Huh? Interesting.
Feel free to have them give me a call, Sandy.
I have to go figure that out. But anyway, their mascot is Ferdinand the Bull, and his from tip to tip, his horns are like 78 inches. There's about 40 of these, and they do the cattle drive twice a day. And they have they pull a trailer with the little kids get on the back, and they get to throw the treats out. And they are calling the cows, and they think the cows are following them because they're calling them. It's totally awesome.
This is actually, I want to let you finish, but this is actually another, like, you could put a red flag on the abandoned trailer and let the bull loose
exactly.
down.
Exactly. But they just do a lot of neat things, and they only have about 20 RV sites that are hookups, and then they have several sites that have power but not hookups, but just regular power and water. But they have unlimited tent camping sites, and we went tent camping again for the first time just to try it out, and we had so much fun. I was almost ready to sell my rig and just tent camp.
No, you weren't. Come on.
Oh yeah, it was that much fun.
No.
So, but we had some near encounters with alligators, and we got chased by the cows, and I ended up with a goat in the tent with me one night because she kept squeezing out and finding me. And
that does not sound like fun.
It was amazing.
It does not sound.
So, and all these little kids who are like, for me, I mean, growing up in the South, I've seen a cow, I've seen a goat, I've seen pigs, no big deal. But for them, it's like, running into something, they've never seen, they've only seen in books. And so it's amazing. And they do education too, of course, while they're doing this, which is a big cool thing about agritourism. So
Christine, I have a question for you. Just so we're and to be clear, before you answer this show is 100% private. We're not broadcasting live. No one's seeing it. If you did have someone sign a waiver for a random bull running around the campground, or you did have them sign a waiver that they knew fireworks were going to be set off, like, is that a loophole for abandoned trailers?
No. Good try. Here's the thing is, just generally people should know that just because there's a waiver or release doesn't mean it'll stop the person from suing you. It just means they have a document.
Well, if they abandon their trailer and you can't find them, then how are they going to sue you?
You're right, but then you wouldn't.
Come get your trailer. We know where you are.
The non-legal advice is if they're not coming back from their trailer, then it probably doesn't matter what happens to it.
Yeah, see?
The non-legal advice.
Yeah. Jason said do an outrun the gator weekend. I like that idea. I refused to sleep along the edge of one of the ponds for that reason, because I was afraid I was going to have to outrun a gator.
Well, I gotta say that is a lot, and I guess they would be on notice of the risk of having their camper where there was a bunch of wild animals. So I mean,
yeah. So as long as you
creative, I guess, but there is not a legal solution for that. So I would not recommend that. I don't think your insurance company would enjoy hearing about you doing that. So I would probably suggest passing on that idea.
We like the idea, Jason, but the attorney poo-pooed it. Sorry.
Creative events and creative problem solving, but probably not legal problem solving.
All right. So we might or might not have a solution. It's just not legal.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So you never heard it here on this private show that's not being broadcast anywhere. All right. 1 minute left. Anybody have any final parting thoughts? Besides Mike wondering why he's giving an hour of his week to spend it with me.
No, I just think we just
spend it with me, right, Mike?
That's right.
That's literally the only reason he shows up is you and Christine.
And Sandy just innovated. Jason Gossett just posted up on the chat that there's an Outrun the Gators weekend. So there's your event, Christine. We come full circle. Christine's looking to run events.
This is perfect.
I cannot wait. I can only imagine.
A lot of gators in New York, right?
Absolutely.
I don't want to speak for Chris Hipple, but I feel like that's a shoe-in for an idea.
So exciting. I could maybe dress people up in gator costumes. We could
Well, we have a gator mitigation budget for our property in South Carolina, so.
Well, there you go. I can't wait to see what July brings now. So when we reconvene in August, I can't wait to hear about how this idea really had legs. So we'll go from there.
I think it's a perfect idea. So, all right. Well, thank you guys all for joining us on another episode of MC Fireside Chats. Next week is our glamping episode, so be sure to come back and see us. We'll be talking with Ruben Martinez and Irene Wood and a bunch of other people who I can't think of off the top of my head who may or may not show up depending on their work schedules. But it'll be a good conversation anyway. So take care, guys. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you, and we'll see you next month.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Thanks for watching this episode of MC Fireside Chats, hosted by Brian Searl and Kara Sismadia. Have a suggestion for a future show or want to see your campground or company as part of an episode? Email us at hello@moderncampground.com. Join us next week for another episode. And don't miss the latest outdoor hospitality news and commentary from around the world at moderncampground.com.